one of the amusing things about being in a world of duality is the fact that thanks to duality, there's contradictions all over the place. And we're halfway into, at least after today, we'll be halfway into the Eightfold Path of Buddhas. And I've thought for years, when I first came across this, the Eightfold Path, that's interesting, because the Kalama Sutta, his first treatise, basically said there are no paths. He said, don't listen to dogma, don't follow anyone else's religion, don't read other books and just take them as gospel, right? He says you have to learn for yourself. The only way to know truth is to experience it yourself, right? And then he gives us the Eightfold Path. I'm like, wait a minute, is that a contradiction? The guy who said there's no path gives us a path. Well, that's duality for you. And it's because you're going to attack it from with a different type of mind. You know, the lower self, the lower mind, is going to be one that clings to a path. I must follow this. My priest says this. That my parent said that, or whatever. Now you're clinging to something. But when you're ready for it and you walk the Eightfold Path, because the way the Buddha teaches it, it's really about how you stay there. It's balancing. It's a point in your development where, like, I think I know what truth is. I want to get good at it. It's a different type of path. It seems like a contradiction, but it's really not. Same thing with some of Jesus' teachings. They called him the Prince of Peace. But in Matthew 10:34, he says, I didn't come to bring peace. I came to bring a sword. Well, that's interesting, because he later admonishes the disciples, those who live by the sword die by the sword. But he also said I came to bring a sword. So which is it, Jesus, sword or not, right? Well, it depends on how you mean it. You could have a sword, like a physical sword, but you also have a sword called your mind, which is capable of discernment, which is capable of dissecting truth and separating the ego from the spirit, stuff like that. And so it's duality. What can you do? There's an as above, so below. It's all one, but it's not one. It's Eshofuni. It's yin yang, right? So the ability is to not see the hypocrisy in this, of course, is that it's a path, and we're going to walk through some of this, in which if you're seeing with right view, it will feel consistent. And you don't have to argue about it because it's consistent. And you'll see as we get into specific actions why that's important. Now remember, with right view, as we talked about, Thich Nhat Hanh, who said a good way to understand right view is to consider your 10-year-old self and contrast it to your current self. Is that you? Your 10-year-old self, was that you? But it's not you anymore, is it? So it is you, but it's not you, right? Same but different. I add the idea of an acorn into an oak tree. Isn't an oak tree just a really well-developed acorn? Yeah, it's mature, but it's not an acorn anymore. And yet it still sort of is. Same but different. And Thich Nhat Hanh said you have an unmanifested match flame and then you have a manifest match flame. You know, right seconds before you strike it, it's sort of there. It's a potential flame, and then it's manifest, and then it goes away. And he says to understand right view is to understand they're different, but they're the same. And then perhaps the biggest, most important teaching of all is that each of us are different, but we're the same, okay? We seem to be different, but we come from the same source. We'll be talking about that in a minute. We have to experience each other as different, but we also have to experience each other as the same. You know, love another as oneself. Well, that seems hard to do. And so again, we got right view. Seems like contradictions, but not really a contradiction. And as we talk about behavior today, that's going to be useful to remember, okay? So we're going to go through the quick review. Each time I'm going to try to make it quicker. Eightfold Path, we're on to step 4 today, right action, but I'm going to make it super quick. Right view. Here's the spiritual aspect of self, the consciousness aspect of self. Your mind, however you want to think of it, the non-physical you. It's clinging to the physical. That's simple. That's the problem. We suffer because we cling to physical. Whatever this is, and that's a giant question mark for a lot of people, you could say the word soul, although Buddhists don't. I'm not interested. I'm not trying to make anyone a Buddhist. I want them to understand the concepts. They say it's something else. But the ultimate idea is there's some part of you that's clinging to something that you're not. At least it's clinging to the temporary self, right? And the way to feel relief of suffering is to learn how to let go. That's right view. Now that's super important because it goes through all the rest of this. Right intention is to be this. Right intention is to get good at detachment, to learn how not to suffer, and then spread it. Be a role model. That's right intention. In all your thoughts and all your experiences with people, you want to spread that type of idea. Do you have to verbalize it? No, you don't need to verbalize it because it's energetic. That's right speech. The word is love. The word isn't the Bible and all the English words in it because it was not written in English anyways originally, right? The word is love, and the love comes from your heart. Speech comes from your heart. if your body and your heart are speaking number one, right view, now you've got right speech. And each and every exchange you have with every person in your life or your dog, every time you're communicating with someone, you have that coming out of your heart. Now you're communicating correctly. Of Course in Miracles, the body is a communication device, right? Our problems are we're attached to the body. We do not know what the body is for. Well, the body is to spread right view. That's what it's for. And now we've got right view, right intention, and right speech all tied into a nice little bow. Because what you're trying to do is show people that the cause of their suffering is their attachment. If all we do is give people more stuff, right? Or we keep seeking more stuff, or we'll distribute the stuff evenly. Remember, we're talking about a millionaire, a multi-millionaire prince in Siddhartha, who was miserable despite his millions. And then he gave up all his money, his whole fortune. And guess what? He was still miserable. Then he realized, well, maybe, just maybe it has nothing to do with money. And he figured that out. In fact, it has nothing to do with stuff at all. He tried to starve himself and he ate 1 grain of rice a day. Until he fainted in a river and he almost drowned, and he realized, well, it's not about having too much stuff and it's not about having too little stuff. Well, maybe I should walk the balance path, right? The middle path. That's balance. You need the right amount, and that's different for everybody anyways. Let's not cling to money or even food or possessions or whatever. Should we be compassionate with others? Of course we should. That doesn't mean we should stop all of that. Even Jesus says you should do those things, but make sure you practice faith, justice, and mercy. Okay? We have to practice the spiritual things while we're doing the physical things. And that would also be right intention, right? Can you donate to charity? Sure you can. Do it with right intention and right speech. We should do those things, but do it with the right energy, okay? So that brings us to right action. And there's so much fun stuff to deep dive into here that I like to say, when I learned a long time ago, first of all, fear no evil. I did not feel like I would be bad if I read another religion. I was a counselor, after all, working with heroin addiction. I had Buddhists come to me, and I had Muslims come to me, and I had atheists, and it wasn't about trying to get people to see the world the way I saw it. It was joining with them somehow, being a peacemaker, right? And I met someone who said, "Can we learn Buddhism?" My friend said he stopped using heroin because of Buddhism. I'm like, sure, why not? If it'll work, I want to learn that skill too. So I dove into it. But every time I stand before you guys, or YouTube or whatever, and I have to dive deeper into the stuff, I find myself doing a little more research, because I want to sort of sound like I know what I'm talking about, right? And every time I do that, seek and you'll find I learn something new. Or I learn a new connection or a new idea, a new way to put it all together. And so we're going to go through a couple of those, right? And you'll see a direct comparison to some of Jesus' teachings, which is sort of off the charts cool. So right action is what it sounds like. What's the physical way we're supposed to be living in this world, okay? I want to emphasize, notice how it's fourth, okay? It comes after view and intention, thought, and speech. For many reasons, our behaviors do come from the way we think. That's largely true in many ways, okay? But it's so less important. Go read the Bhagavad Gita, where it says that action is inferior and knowledge puts action to ashes, okay? Action has almost nothing to do with it, because if it's not backed by the right intention or right view, your actions will be worthless. In fact, the road to hell is paved through poor intention or improper intention. That's because when we're trying to make the world a better place through ego, it doesn't work. Well, it's also through action. We don't really help anybody, says the Course in Miracles. If all we're doing is helping them live their better ego lives, that's not sufficient. Should you do that? Sure, why not? But if we don't introduce people to right view, if we don't help them understand the cause of their suffering, Thich Nhat Hanh himself says it's improper love. I'm paraphrasing. True love, spiritual love, agape love, is to help people understand right view, okay? So all our actions need to be backed up, or backed up by those ideas, the view, the intention, and the speech, okay? However, they have what's known in Buddhism as the 5 precepts. One of them we talked about last time, but I'm going to show you a couple of, 3 more of them. There's 5 total. And the 5 precepts are specific behaviors. You'll see why we have to be mindful, and I talked about all the duality stuff, because we don't want to get trapped in these behaviors and thinking these are solid gold standards. I'm going to become the Buddha if I do these 5 things, okay? Or God will be happy with me if I do these 5 things. Precepts is what the Buddhists call them. And a precept, definition, general rule intended to regulate behavior or thought. It is not a commandment. Super important. When people follow this stuff like dogma, it's like, oh, must do that exactly like that, or I'm not a Buddhist. That's what the Christians are doing too, aren't they? Okay? And yet, beautiful parallel, I'll go through them, beautiful parallel with the teaching of Jesus in Scripture. Number 1 precept, don't kill. Good advice, would you all agree? Anyone want to argue with that? Pretty good advice. Number 2, don't steal. All right, I can see that. Good advice. I'm going to skip this one. No sexual misconduct. All right? Pretty much want to know what you mean by that, but all right, makes sense. Don't do sexual misconduct, okay? Those are 3 precepts that fall under right action. The 4th one, or one that I skipped over, was don't lie. We already did that in right speech. And the 5th one, which isn't under right action, but it goes into the rest of them, is no intoxicants, okay? Now, I'm going to address all of them, and you'll see, because we did this with right speech. Don't lie, okay? Good idea. Don't be a liar. You'd agree with that pretty quickly, right? But if a child comes in here and he says, I can't wait, Santa Claus is coming next week, and he's 3, you're going to tell him, there is no Santa Claus. I'm not allowed to lie to you, okay? The fact is, it's a made-up story. Now, would you tell that because you don't want to be a liar? No, you wouldn't say that, because right intention, all right? The fact is, you want to get across the contents of your heart. You know where a child is in his process. Does he need to understand that right now? No, he doesn't. There's a time to learn clinging, and he's going to learn how to break up with Santa later on, okay? You want to spread love, right speech, right? You want to spread the word, and it's backed by your right view. You understand this, but what's the spirit that you're getting across to the kid? They'll feel the love. You tell him that there's no Santa, he's not going to want to listen to you again, right? Plus, you're going to have a problem with his parents soon. So, and that can go on and on. There's many different contexts in which you might lie, but it's a general rule. Of course it makes sense. In general, don't lie. How about killing? We can talk about that one too. Well, it's a great general rule. That goes without saying. But there's context there. Ask yourself the question, what would Buddha have done if he were on one of the planes on 9/11? I usually do this with Jesus too. What would have he done? Let's hold hands, sing Kumbaya, and go down together? What if Buddha happened to have a knife on him or something, and someone starts to go attack a child in front of him? Would he say, no killing now. Just let the child die, or do you think he might get involved? What about euthanasia? What about our pets? Because Buddha teaches not to kill animals too. But there's context there, isn't it? It's a general rule. You see a dog, in fact, I had a friend that went through this. He hit a deer, and the deer was clearly going to die on the side of the road. He happened to have a knife, and he helped the deer go. Wasn't that compassion? Or not killing, okay? And so again, I can't emphasize this enough. General rule. These are not commandments, okay? It's a good idea to practice this stuff, and hopefully you can go through your whole life without killing anything. But you better not be driving a car, because you're going to squish insects. And one of the practices, and I've studied this with some Buddhist masters, they say, listen, if you want to get really deep into Buddhism, don't be killing insects, okay? But is it a requirement to reach nirvana? No, it's not. It's not a commandment, okay? Right view is. Besides, this stuff is more clinging, isn't it? I listened to one Buddhist teacher talk about, it's not death that Buddhists are upset about with killing. It's the killing, right? It's not like they're worried that anyone's going to die, because from the Buddhist perspective, nobody does die, okay? But the act of killing, it's not spreading compassion. In almost every case, we can see that clearly. But we have to be careful how to see this from right view. Is it, can it be true and not true at the same time? Yeah. Right? Same thing with acorns and the oak trees or whatever. Same thing with stealing. You know, most of us have seen Les Mis. We love Les Mis, right? Why did Jean Valjean get in trouble? Because he stole a loaf of bread because he was starving and his kids were starving or something, right? Would you steal a loaf of bread if you were starving? Or would you say, no, it must be Buddhist, not steal? And take it off you. What if you have a little kid that's starving right there? What's the compassionate thing to do? Steal the bread, save the kid. That would make sense. Got it? Now, there might be some people who disagree with me. That's fine. I'll refer to the Kalama Sutta. Don't judge me. Okay? It works for me. If it works for you, ride that wave. All right. No intoxicants. Again, we'll do this a little bit more later because it's important for the later stages of this. But it does mean things like don't drink or use drugs and stuff like that. But that's in the case if it's going to interfere with your right view. Is it okay if you're at a wedding to raise a toast? why wouldn't that be okay? Jesus turned water into wine. Why was he not turning wine into water, as the story goes? Okay? And so there's context here. And there are some Buddhists who would probably, I'll get some comments on this too, that's so wrong. No, that's what you have to do. I'm like, well, now you sound like a Christian. I'm the stereotypical kind. The very kind that Jesus railed against. Okay? Because when asked of the most important commandments, how many of these precepts do you recognize as one of the 10 commandments? Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness. Thou shalt not sleep with the neighbor's wife. Aren't these the 10 commandments right here? Right? What did Jesus say when he was asked about the 10 commandments? He dismissed them. He said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love another as oneself. Sounds like Buddha. That's what he said. Basically, it's like, well, let's go to right view first. He didn't say it like that. But he dismissed the 10 commandments. Because you know what? If you love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, you're not likely to kill people. But if you need to kill someone because, you know, they're about to blow up a restaurant, you know, if a little old lady's walking across the street and you help her and then she goes and blows up the restaurant, did you really help? Or should you stop her from that? You know, that's a good question, isn't it? Should we kill or not kill? Jesus didn't address that, did he? He said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And then he said, love another as oneself. Well, we already did that with right view. We are each other. We are all one. And so to understand that, we came from the same source. I drew this big balloon up here. I did it in green because green is the heart chakra. It's Buddha nature. We all come from Buddha nature. We all end up at Buddha nature. It's like what Apostle Paul says. How foolish are you, Galatians, to start in the spirit and end up in the flesh? Why are we ending up in behaviors? Okay? You're spirit. You'll always be spirit. It's through grace alone we are saved. Please stop bringing behaviors into it. Behaviors are just precepts. Behaviors are guidelines, things that you can try to do to gain mastery. It's not a requirement. Okay? You're all forgiven. There you go. No behaviors involved. And so Buddha would be emphasizing the same thing. It's a good idea to work on this stuff for sure, but it's not required. So Jesus dismissed the 10 commandments. And then he says to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And that's another way of saying trust everything. Everything that happens to you, trust it, love it, embrace it. Now you won't be clinging to certain results. You won't be clinging to certain outcomes or jobs or relationships or money or whatever. You won't need to cling to it. If you love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, right? And then right intention is to love another as oneself. It's right there. We're all on the same team. We all come from this place, as the drawing I had last time, we all come from this bubble here, energy called love. We're all different beings. It's unified diversity. We all come from it. No one's excluded. When God said, you're all God's, all of you are children of the Most High, he didn't leave anybody out. This includes everybody, okay? And so these are not commandments. They're recommended behaviors. But if you do it the right way, I love how one of the teachers said, the thing about don't kill, don't steal, don't lie, no sexual immorality, no intoxicants, infants do that, or they don't do that, right? What 6-month-old tend to kill? Which 6-month-old are stealing and lying, right? None of them. But they're not doing it mindfully, or they're not doing it mindfully. They're just infants, they're laying there. The key to these precepts is to do it with right view and right intention and right speech, right? The key is to understand why you're doing what you're doing. That's called mindfulness. Babies don't understand. Maybe they do in a way, but it's certainly different than our experience. And what gets us to do these things anyways? It's the human ego. It's the devil. And the renunciation in the Eightfold Path is your conscious, willing decision to go outside your comfort zone. You want to kill someone, but you choose not to. Boom. That's mindful. You want to steal, but you choose not to. That's mindful. And that's a practice you have. You're not bad if you did it. Didn't Jesus take a thief with him straight to heaven? He didn't look at his resume. All the thief did is looked at Jesus and got it. That's it. He just got it. That's right view. The thief next to Jesus had right view, and the one on the other side didn't. And that's why that one got to go. Okay? It's that simple. So you can do these things. It's probably going to interfere with your process, though. Probably. I can't tell for sure. So it's a practice when combined with right view and right intention. Now we're doing things mindfully. Now we're also right speech. We're spreading a certain kind of energy. Could you imagine if the only reason you don't kill people because you don't want to go to jail or disappoint God? That isn't right view at all. Okay? It's clinging to my freedom there. Apostle Paul was fully free. He wasn't worried about his freedom. He said, I'm still with Christ wherever I go. That was detachment. It was also right view. Okay? So these behaviors that we're recommending people do or don't do, if they're combined with right intention and right view, guess what you're doing? In every action, in everything that you do, you are showing compassion. It comes off of you like the sun is shining. It's a frequency, it's a vibration. It comes out of your heart. It'll come out of your mouth. Dogs can feel it. Human beings can feel it, right? Apparently, plenty of studies demonstrate flowers can feel it. That would be right action. Whatever you choose to do, remember, good guidelines. But walking down the street, saying hi to someone, going to Sheets, getting gas, can't you always be in right view and right intention and right speech? Sure. Your heart's always speaking. It's E.T., right? Turn on your heart light. I don't think Buddha said that, but you get the point. The idea is always be spreading the light in all your actions. There aren't any more, by the way, when you get into right action. There aren't any more suggestions. Those are just pretty obviously darn good ones, but they're not commandments. In each and everything that you do, the action must be combined with 1, 2, and 3 here. Thich Nhat Hanh said, again, Buddhist expert, he said, here's the funny thing about action, 2 and 3 are already action. We tend to think of intention and thought and speech as somehow different than physical action, but he goes, no, already action. It's already doing something. You're verbalizing something, you're intending something, right? You're speaking something. It's action. All of it is action. It's important to know because he still differentiates this because there's a behavioral component to it. But nail these first. See when you understand these concepts and you're walking around all the time, I want to spread, love and mindfulness and truth to all beings, not just those I like, then it's going to be in your word, it's going to be in your deed. Okay? That would be right action. You're combining all of them. So you do want to do the precepts and more. That's the verse I already said with Jesus too. When he said to the disciples or some of his followers, you're focused on tithing, dill, and mint, and cumin. When you should be focused on the weightier matters of the law, faith, justice, and mercy. That's Jesus straight up saying, will you stop obsessing over tithing physical things and doing all these physical things? The weightier matters of the law are faith, justice, and mercy. Those are very specific spiritual skills. Very important ones, and he could have named more for sure, okay? But he's going to do it in the right order, right? What good is it to gain the whole world and lose your soul? Seek first the kingdom of heaven and all the rest will be added to you. These fit right in beautifully. Kingdom of heaven is going to be found right here and walking through this whole path. Seek that first, and then let's see what happens to you. I do it because it's good for mental health and it helps people break their addictions. Okay? If it benefits your life in other ways, awesome. But it's certainly good mental health training, right? So we are supposed to do all the compassionate, good stuff. But whatever it is that you do it with right view, right intention, and right speech in mind. And notice how we're on the 4th step here. All of this stuff, repeat. Hebb's law comes to mind. If you keep repeating it, just like learning English, you're going to get good at it. All right? If you only think of this once, then it's out of your mind and it's gone forever. But you repeat it in all the things that you think and say, and you always link it back to, why am I suffering here? The only reason I suffered when Tom Brady kept winning Super Bowls was because of my jealousy and my attachment to that guy not winning Super Bowls, and my team needs to win them. That's why I suffered. Other people root for other teams and they feel better as a result or whatever, but it's not because of the result of the action. It's how we're attached to things, right? And so once you recognize that, each and everything that you do, you make sure that you talk about it that way and you intend it the right way, okay? Now, very important part of right action is this is where karma shows up first and foremost, really. It's throughout all of it. But karma is very important here, and it's also your opportunity to look at it different. I often tease us Americans. We're pretty young relative to the rest of the world. We're way behind the Far East, for sure. We're pretty young, at least in the United States. And we have a pretty immature understanding of karma. And most of you, I say that, and you automatically think what you think about it, and that's what I'm talking about. We think of it as physical, and if you do something physical, you're going to have something physical like that come right back at you. And yet, if karma exists, why did Jesus end up getting crucified? If karma exists like we think, why did he get crucified? Who did he crucify? Who did he kill? Why did he deserve to be killed? That's not fair. Well, that's because karma isn't physical like we think. Karma is energetic, and action is karma. Why is that? Again, Thich Nhat Hanh described it perfectly. He says, in all that you are doing, how you're speaking, and what you're intending and thinking, and all that you're doing, you have a signature, he said. You have a signature. It's your signature. It's associated with it. Long after you're dead, he said. That signature will carry on. That energy will carry on. Think of Jesus again. 2,000 years ago he died. Buddha's 2,500 years ago. We're benefiting today. Where are they? I tease all the time. They've never helped me mow the lawn, do the dishes, right? Where have they really helped me, okay? Oh man, have they helped me. The spirit that they unleashed, the wisdom that they unleashed, carries on, says Thich Nhat Hanh. If you want to just worry about your physical body, fine. But the energy is carried on through thought and intention and speech and action, okay? And so guess what? That's karma. Well, the negative stuff is also karma too. Because, the future generations, the energy that you put into the world, they're going to have to learn how to deal with that. Ignorance comes to mind, and all the negative stuff, that's there too. But the karma is not the physical aspect only, although that's involved. Why are you doing what you're doing? The right view and right intention is super important. What if I'm only being nice to you because I'm planning on manipulating you later? And Kabbalah describes it that way, that outer giving is really inner taking. Are we only being nice so that we can get into the kingdom of heaven? That's pretty ego. Is it really authentic? Look what Jesus had to do. That was a pretty big deal. Buddha went through a dark night of the soul too to get to where he needed to go. The point isn't to use karma to have your best physical life. The point is to use karma to experience Buddha nature. So karma isn't going to determine whether or not you have a good physical experience or not. That's not what it's about. People always think of it like that. He got what was coming to him, karma. And oftentimes people don't realize that applies to them too. Whatever bad thing happened to you, do you embrace it like karma? No. Karma is pushing you towards Buddha nature. Up here I wrote the words Tao, spirit, peace, whatever word you want to use. I don't think Buddha would be offended, okay? Jesus said, be a peacemaker, however it works to you, however you conceptualize it. But we're talking about Buddha, so Buddha nature, that's your essence. And karma is pushing you there. Now imagine if you spend your life in all your deeds and all that you're doing, you have right view, you understand how suffering happens. You also understand how peace happens by learning how to let go. Intention and thought in all your deeds, your teaching, or all your words and all your thoughts, you are practicing right view. And then when you speak it, you're putting it into action there too. And then through our behaviors. If that's what you're doing all the time, you're going to be pushed closer to Buddha nature. It even reminds me of Buddha's death. When he, as the story goes, was poisoned, and the guy that poisoned him said he wanted to apologize because he didn't mean to kill the Buddha. Others say he was assassinated, but whatever. I like this story. So the guy that accidentally poisoned Buddha, he was his cook, he said, I would like to apologize to the Buddha while the Buddha was dying. And you know what the Buddha said? Don't worry about it. You just pushed me closer to Buddhahood. Okay? He recognized in all aspects of his being, like Jesus was sinless, moving towards Christ consciousness, and all the aspects of Buddha's being, he knew he was moving towards Buddha nature too. Now we're halfway in. Down here I've got back in green again. Right action is halfway to Buddha nature. Okay, we're 4 in. There's 4 more to go. Mastery of this is key. The major reward, so to speak, which must be experienced, says the Buddha, happens in step 8. Right? That's at the very end. It's a process that the Buddha says we're all going through. A lot of people haven't even begun this journey. That's okay. They'll eventually figure it out. But once you're on the journey, that karma is always pushing you to completion. Every time you step out of line and you don't practice right view, you suffer. In fact, like Jesus would say, you're going to suffer more. To those who much has been given, much is expected. You will receive a severe beating if you step out of line and you stop looking at things with right view. And if you don't speak with right speech, and if you don't intend or think the right way, guess what? You're going to get torn up a little bit because you stepped out of line. That's karma. And what's that karma going to do? Get back in line, practice these steps, master these steps. The next couple steps are very important for finishing this off, but here's the setup. We're halfway in. Like I said, we're getting closer to our Buddha nature, and that's what karma is always pushing us to.